Hey everybody, Whitney Labrie here, and this week I'm working on the backyard to my Garfield dollhouse. And of course, it just can't be any backyard. No, of course, it's going to be Alice in Wonderland theme. But what does that mean? It means that it's going to be super fun and filled with a lot of nonsense. So follow me on down that rabbit hole and let's get started. If I have to be completely honest about this backyard space, this will be the third time that I'm doing something for the backyard. I built the labyrinth backyard for it. I built the she shed last summer for it, and I'm not going to use that either. And the reason is because I keep building stuff that are way too big, not out of scale, but just in the way where I can't really manage getting into the dollhouse without moving it every time. And I don't want to do that this time. So when I'm building this Alice in Wonderland backyard, I am going to build it not only where it's easily removable just in general, but that everything is shorter and out of the way so I can just reach into the dollhouse, especially on those first floors, whenever I need to without issue. Once it's cut down, I'm going to sketch out where I want some items. So I know for sure I'm going to have a pond. And then I also want to have an area that is a barbecue pit area and a table for eating. And then of course, I'll add in some other fun accessories along the way. Let's start off by making that pond. I am using some paper clay for the pond, and I'm going to go ahead and sculpt it out. I really like this clay for a couple different reasons. It does have minimal shrinkage. It's a fairly dry clay when you use it. Sometimes you have to add a little bit of water just to manipulate it a little bit. And it's very lightweight when it dries. I really enjoy it quite a bit. Plus, I already had it on hand, so why not save my cash and use my stash, of course. And I'm going to be molding it out onto wax paper before I place it on the foam board. Of course, I'm doing that because I don't want to really squish my foam board when I'm rolling it out. And I want to have kind of a fun shape. I'm doing kind of like a kidney bean shape a little bit. I really don't need this to be a very deep pond because we can give the illusion that it's deeper than it is just in the way that we paint or decorate it. But I definitely need it to have a little bit of a lip on it because I will be filling it with some resin water and of course some other different accessories. So once I have the shape in place, I'm going to keep it on the wax paper, but then I'm going to move it on top of my drawn out stencil so that I can make sure that the shape is in accordance to what I drew. And then I also want to have a fountain in the center of this little pond. So I'm just going to put a little base right in the center so I could set a fountain right on top of it. That's going to take some time to dry, so we'll go ahead and set that aside and move on to the fountain. For the fountain, I really want it to be very whimsical. And of course, since I'm doing Alice in Wonderland, it just seemed fitting to have it as a tea set fountain. So what I'd like it to look like is a whole bunch of tea set pieces piled up on top of one another, and then the tea kettle poured over and have water flowing from that to the cup, to the saucer, to the cup, to the saucer, that type of look. And so what I'm going to use today is this little mini 12 scale tea set that I have with some pink roses on it. And then for the base, I'm going to use this little plate that I have that's a round plate rather than using the platter that comes with the set. I'm using super glue to hold all of these pieces together, and I'm actually starting off with another little teacup that is a mismatch from another set that's a larger scale, and I'm using this to give the fountain a little bit more height. From here, I just pretty much played with the pieces and glued them down, kind of moved them quite a bit. You know, the point was just to make sure that they made sense logically when it came to gravity and how water would fall. And this is ultimately what I had come up with, but you can see there that the kettle is not quite tall enough. Okay, so ultimately what I did was I added another sugar bowl to give that top kettle a little bit more height, which made more sense for the waterfall. Now to make the water, I used a product called Water Effects. I use this anytime I want to make running water. I use it for Willy Wonka and the waterfall. I use it for the labyrinth water fountain in the back. I've used it in the sink to make it look like water was pouring out of the faucet. You can use it in the bathtub. It is a product that takes some time to dry. Now I have some left over from the Willy Wonka waterfall that I did, and so in this case I don't need to make any more. So I'm just going to cut off some little pieces of this waterfall right here, and then I'm going to add those to the fountain so that it looks like there's water dripping from the kettle to the cup, and then from the saucer to the next cup on the next level. You can kind of see it there. It's kind of hard to see in the video, but it's there. Now I'm going to take another product called Realistic Water. I'm going to use this a few times throughout this backyard project. So Realistic Water is a premix. It's water-based and it's designed for modeling Still or like slow moving water, or like this pond that I'm doing is going to be perfect for that. UV resin, on the other hand, hardens very quickly under UV light. Now I'm going to actually use both today so you can see the difference in what I'm talking about. While the realistic water sets, I'm going to go ahead and start decorating it by adding some flowers, maybe a little bit of moss. I'm going to add a little turtle and of course some butterflies. And that's the other thing about the resin water is it takes a lot longer to set. So you have a little bit of playroom if you made any mistakes. And typically it's self-leveling as far as the liquid goes. So it's a really nice product to use. All right, now the clay is drying on the pond and the resin water is setting in the fountain. I'm gonna move on over to that foam board. I actually bought a scrapbook paper packet of just vintage Alice in Wonderland type items. And I would love to have the patio area where the barbecue pit will be and the table look like a large chessboard. I was going to make one, but they actually had this beautiful scrapbook paper that I thought would be perfect for it. So I'm gonna use this. First off, though, I do need to go ahead and paint my foam board in a base color. I'm going to go with this darker campground green and cover pretty much the whole foam board. I'm just going to dry brush some on here. With foam board, of course, you have to be really careful for moisture. It will bow up a little bit no matter what you do, really. So I just try to be very aware of anything going on top of it as far as moisture goes to create more of a bow than it needs to be. So I'm base coating it, like I said. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to be covered up with grass, but this also will hide any bald spots. Now getting back to that scrapbook paper, I don't want to just glue down a big piece of scrapbook paper. So I'm going to cut these squares down individually and then just lay them back out as a chess set. So I'll cut them all down, and then the idea will be that I will glue moss in between all of these so that they'll look like stone. I will place them back as best as I can to be as straight as possible. I doubt that I will be able to do that, but let's get to it. So I'm going to go ahead and get that completed. And voila. And then once they're all glued in place, I did a little bit of a Mod Podge coating on the top of them, and then I'll just let this set aside as well to dry. I really want this pond to be magical and happy, and I think a really happy color is this aqua blue sky. This is going to give this pond this really bright blue color. It reminds me more of a pool color, which I don't know about you, but sitting by the pool makes me happy. So we're definitely going to go with that color. For the top trim, I'm going to use a light gray, and for the sides, I'm going to use a color called celery green. I have a bunch of these broken abalone shells. This was actually a vase filler, and I'm going to go ahead and add those to the pond, just around the outer edges and then some in the center. I don't want to add a huge amount of plants to the pond, but I am going to cut down a few little pieces here for some of the corners. And then this brightly colored orange and yellow one, they have these little bulbs at the tips, and I'm just cutting off a few of those. And I'm going to place them underneath some lily pads so that they maybe look like goldfish. Now taking some Elmer's glue in clear, I'm going to saturate the whole outside of the pond, and this is going to get it ready in order for me to add some tufting to it. I'm also going to go ahead while I'm at it and add glue to the chessboard so that I can also add moss to that area as well. While the glue sets and the moss dries, we are going to add a few plants to the corner of the pond. Now this time I am going to use my UV resin to do that. So I add just a little bit of the resin, and then I will have my UV light ready, and then I just place the plants in the resin. I'll shine my UV light right over that, and it will go ahead and harden that resin right away, basically adhering the plants to the pond immediately. I'm also going to add my little goldfish right near where the water fountain will be. And I'm doing the same thing there. I'm just adding a few of my little fish, adding a little UV resin, putting my UV light over it, and hardening that area that they're already in place. The reason I'm doing it like this is because when you use the realistic water, sometimes the items can shift in the pond area. And so I want to make sure that these little fish don't go anywhere because I want them right in that spot. And that's why I'm doing it like this. All right, and now it's time to go ahead and glue in our tea set water fountain right into the center. And then I'm going to get my realistic water and go ahead and do a pour over the whole base of the pond. I have more miniature lily pads, so I'm going to add a whole bunch around the base of the fountain and a couple over in the corner also. I'm going to put a couple on top of the goldfish too, just so that it looks like some of them are peeking out from underneath the lily pads. I'm going to let that resin water set for just a little bit, a couple hours. It's going to take much longer than that, but I just wanted to harden a little bit because I'm going to add grass. So if any blows into it, I can remove it if I need to. Although some in it might make it look a little bit more realistic. So for the grass, I'm going to do a static grass And there is a special glue to use when you're doing that. It's called static tack, and it's for static grass. And I'll start by pouring a generous amount onto my foam board. We'll let it sit for a second. I just actually smear it on with my finger. You could use a paintbrush, but why ruin another paintbrush? And then I have my static grass machine, and there are several different ones on the market that you can use. You put your static grass in the container, and then you just shake it over the glue area. Of course, when you're turning on the static grass machine, it will help lift the static grass up so that it's pointed in the right direction, which is up. As different sections begin to dry, I like to take a nice clean paintbrush and brush over the grass very lightly to get any loose pieces, and then I will re-glue and dust those areas again with the static grass. And I used a more brilliant color green than I did in the front yard of this dollhouse because I figured Alice in Wonderland, I wanted it to kind of have a little bit more of an enchanted look, so it's a much more vibrant green. And I did mix in a little bit though of a duller color green just for some variation, but mostly it's that really a much more brilliant green. All right, that glue and grass is going to take some time to dry and set as well. So let's talk about some other kind of fun accessories that I want to add to the pond area. I bought a few mushrooms at the end of the Halloween season this past Halloween. So I got this really cool tall mushroom. It has a nice solid base. And then I also found these little clip-on mushrooms. These were end of year clearance as well. They have these little these clips. I wanted to call it a roach clip, you guys. Oh my God. I'm going to take those off, okay? And then I'm going to glue them also to the outside of the pond area. Now, the mushrooms, the little purple ones, purplish pink, they need a little bit more stability. So once I glue them in, I'm going to add a few more plants around the base of them also just for added help. I also have a whole bunch of these large mossy rocks, and they're made of foam, so they're really light. These are vase fillers also. I've had them forever, and I'm going to kind of place them around. I'm not going to glue them down yet because I don't know ultimately where they're going to end up, but I'm definitely going to use them. I think they're really cool looking. I also have this little floral garden hedge that I made a long time ago for the front of the dollhouse, but wind up not using it. So I think I'm going to try to use it in the backyard area here. I'll put it off to the side for now. It may not end up here, but this is where it's going to live for now. Okay, everybody, so I think that this is a good stopping point for now. We've got a good base going on, but there are about a billion more things that I want to do in this backyard. So let's start with the pond area. I definitely want to add some more interest around the pond, and then I also want to add more water. I want to have water coming off of the bottom of the tea set and then going into the pond. I think that would be really important to have that feature. Plus, it'll create some motion or some movement over here, which I think is super fun. I also want to add a barbecue area, and then of course we have to absolutely have an area for eating, or in this case, having a great tea party and celebrating your unbirthday. I also want to talk about characters and dolls and some other fun accessories. So I'm hoping to have accomplished all of that in the next Alice in Wonderland video. So if you haven't already subscribed, make sure to do that so that you don't miss any future content. I'd love to hear your ideas and things that you might like to see in the upcoming video as well. So make sure to let me know what you thought of the backyard so far and any ideas that you'd love for me to incorporate, and I will try to do it if I can. Hey, Tiny Winnie, why are you in the pond? Please don't mess it up. No, don't splash. I do not want the camera getting wet. You are such a goofball. Get out of there. I'm serious. Don't splash the camera. Tiny Whitney. All right, you guys. Well, have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next time. Bye.